If you're doing your job well as a leader, then you're going to grow out of that leadership role. That's okay. But how you handle the transition, leaving one and entering the other, is going to make a huge difference on the future of your leadership. Hey leader, David Burke is here, organizational psychologist and author of 4 best-selling books on helping leaders and teams do their best work ever. And in this episode, we're gonna talk about how to leave a leadership position, how to leave a team. And okay, right off the bat, that might sound like a bummer, but here's the reality. If you're doing your job well, then you're gonna grow. One of the responsibilities of a leader is to make sure that everybody on the team grows. That means that certain people are gonna grow out of your team, and one of those people is going to be you. You are going to grow into new leadership roles. And when that happens, you're going to have to say goodbye to the team. You're going to have to resign from that position. Maybe it's to join another company. Maybe it's just breaking the news to your team. In this episode, we're gonna talk about all of the steps you need to go through to leave a leadership position and an organization. But if you're just leaving that team for a new leadership position in the same organization, it should be pretty easy to figure out which steps you don't need to include and how you need to make those adjustments. If you follow this process, you'll be leaving that role well, which is gonna set you up to join the new team even better. And as a result, you'll grow as a leader just from the act of growing from one team to the next. So the first step in stepping down as a leader, first step in stepping down, that's a little bit of a weird way to say it, but we'll run with it, is to write your resignation letter. Prepare it ahead of time. Before you do anything else, write that resignation letter. It doesn't have to be robust. Some of these get way too long, but a simple written document saying, please accept my letter of resignation, or please accept my 2 weeks notice of resignation, or 90 days, or whatever your organization demands. Please accept my resignation. My last day will be so-and-so. Right? And any other details that may be specific to your organization. Make sure you end by expressing gratitude to the people that are going to see this letter, usually your boss and a few other people, for the opportunity served. So you want to do 2 or 3 things here, right? The first is make it clear, you're gone. This is not like renegotiable, etc. You're gone. This is your target departure date. And also you appreciate everything that people have done for you to grow as a leader. If you don't actually appreciate any of that, now is not the time, and permanent documentation is not the place to express that. Those conversations may come later, or you may realize once you're in that new role that they weren't really worth having to begin with. So please accept my letter of resignation. My last day will be this. Thank you so much for the opportunity. However you want to say that, as concisely and as graciously as you can, prepare that letter ahead of time, because the conversation will be the act of serving that letter. The second step in stepping down from a leadership role is to get right to the conversation. Whoever it is you address that letter to, the person you need to notify, you're going to break the news to them in real time. If you can do a face-to-face conversation, great. If not, then this is still going to be a video call or a phone call. You're not going to just email them that letter and give them no warning on your departure. And you're certainly not going to film some sort of TikTok or Instagram reel quitting in public and then just posting that out for all to see. Ignore that trend. That's not going to help you. You're going to go right to the person and you're going to break the news in person. But you're going to bring that letter with you, or you're going to send that letter while you're in that conversation. The reason being is that the humane and kind thing to do is to break that news in person, but the finality of the letter is also what you need to say, this is over. I'm moving on. We're not having a counter-offer conversation here. We're having a conversation about my smooth departure. In that conversation, you're going to transition right to step 3. And step 3 is get clear on the details. You may already know from having to go through this with other people on your team, or you may not know what the process of departure looks like. Every organization is different. Some organizations, you give your 2 weeks notice and you really do work for 2 weeks. Other organizations, you give your 2 weeks notice and you work until your PTO pays out, right? Other organizations, you're gone that day. I once left a position and my email was shut off 45 minutes later. I was gone that day. Every organization handle these a little bit differently, and now's not the time to fight over all those details, but you do want to make sure of them. You want to make sure you know what's happening in terms of your security clearances, your tech passwords and that sort of stuff, any company assets that you have that need to be sent back. You want to get clear on all of that for 2 reasons. One, you want to be known as someone who handled those details and took care of them graciously, because you never know where your career is going to go and whether or not you're going to be back at that organization or back working with that leader that you're resigning for. So you want to be known as someone who handled this professional. But you also want to get it off your mind, right? Who wants to start a new position at a new organization and get 4 or 5 emails to your personal email address or LinkedIn messages from someone trying to chase you down just to get that computer back, right? You don't want to do that. You want to get it done as quickly as possible and get it off your mind. So this conversation after the resignation is about getting clear on those details so you can handle it professionally and promptly. Speaking of promptly, the 4th step after this conversation is to break the news to your team. Rumors love a vacuum. Rumors love it when nobody is saying anything because little half-truths or even total falsities spread like wildfire when there's a lack of other information. And so you want to get to your team as quickly as possible and tell them what's going on. We're assuming here that you're resigning, not because you've been forced to resign, but because you've grown into a new leadership role and you want to get that news to your team as quickly as possible so that the other rumors don't come in. I mean, you also want to do it because this is your team. These are your people. These are the people you've been working alongside for, 40 plus hours a week for probably the last several years of your life. You owe it to them to break the news in person if you are able to. And again, this is where we want to step 3, get clear on the details, because I'm assuming you're able to. If you're not, you want to know that. You want to be able to have that in-person conversation with them. You want to be able to receive any messages they want to send to you with finality. And you want to do that as quickly as possible to avoid those rumors. You also want to do a couple more things, which is step 5 in the process, which is to bring the new leader, if there is a new leader, or to bring your boss with you in that meeting or on that call. You want to do this for a couple reasons. The first and really technical reason is that it's always good to have a third party in these situations that can help you document what happened just in case something crazy happens, right? I don't think anyone's gonna stand on their desk and yell, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and quit with you. Really cool Dead Poet Society reference there, by the way. I don't think that's going to happen, but you do want someone in the room just in case crazy stuff happens. You also, in most cases, want to put that team in direct and personal or real-time touch with whoever's going to be their interim leader. Now, if you're moving into a role and we know who the new leader is, even better if we can bring that person, right? But this is about transitioning the team and getting them familiar with who they're going to be responsible to, at least while a new leader is found, if not in perpetuity. This is about the handoff just as much as it's about saying goodbye. It's about helping them say hello to the new team leader and to process this as a team. Step 6 is also in this team conversation. You're going to want to explain how you'd like to stay in touch. Now, here's what I mean by that, right? So often we get so caught up in the details and in saying goodbye, and then we say stuff like reach out anytime, and we never talk about how. Do they have your personal email address? Would you prefer to keep all of that conversation on a medium like LinkedIn? Would you prefer that they call you on your cell phone if you need anything? Not only the method that you want to stay in touch, but reasons to stay in touch. Past leaders who work in a different organization are often great references for when those people are looking to move to a still different organization, because you can provide a reference to those people without risking their job or without tipping it off that they're looking at leaving that organization. So if you're willing to be that, now is the time to state it. If you're willing to continue to provide feedback to that team, to help that team as they're working on stuff during the transition to that new leader, now's the time to say it. You want to get quite clear on what it is, because people are probably not going to think to ask, and then months from now are thinking awkwardly, do I reach out to them or not? But also because you want to make it clear what you're not going to do for them so that they don't reach out with some asks that you're uncomfortable with. So make sure you're going to say not only how you'd like to stay in touch, but for what reasons you want to stay in touch with the team. And the final step in stepping down from a leadership position, and this is really not a step, it's just a good piece of advice, is when you are scheduling that conversation with your team, leave time for additional conversation. All right, it might be that your team is going to process this really emotionally. This might be a tear fest, right? This might be people each talking about what they mean to each other and what they mean to you, or it might not. They might be excited to see you go and would never have told you that to your face, but now they have the opportunity. Whatever it is, you're going to want to leave time for it. And even if there is no time, if the conversation ends quickly, that's fine too. You might want some time to process everything as well. What you don't want is a situation where you have to limit what you can talk about and limit your goodbyes because you have to be shuttled off to another meeting. Make sure you schedule an additional 15, 30 minutes, maybe even longer for that conversation. You don't know if you're gonna need it, but you're gonna be glad if you've scheduled it. And the worst case scenario, if it doesn't happen and this conversation happens quickly, is you've just given yourself some buffer time to process what just happened and prepare for what's next. In any situation, you'll be better off if you leave time for conversation. By the way, that rhymed and I totally didn't expect it. Now, as I said at the top, this assumes that you are leaving to go to a totally different organization, but it should be pretty easy to figure out what things you do or don't need to do if you are moving to a new leadership role inside your organization. There's still details to get clear on. You still have to say goodbye to your team. You still probably want to put them in touch with whoever that new leader is. You're definitely going to want to get clear on how they want to stay in touch and what you're willing to help and not help as you focus in on your team with. So a lot of these steps are still going to apply. And as you probably picked up, these are steps that not only covered what you need to do, professionally or legally, but also humanely, empathetically, as someone who's enjoyed leading this team for however long you've enjoyed leading them. How you leave a team is going to have a massive effect on how they think about you for the rest of their career. And you don't know, in this weird, crazy, close-knit, networked world that we live in, who you're going to get the opportunity to work with again. Maybe not in an organization, but as a vendor or client or some other partner. And so leaving with professionalism and with grace, and leaving making sure people feel taken care of even in your departure, is going to help you in those future situations. It's also going to help clear your mind to prepare to lead that next team, that team that you want to be professional but also empathetic in, and that team that you want to help do their new best work ever. Oh, and one more thing. We went through these steps pretty technically, but there's some situations where you may not know if you're doing this in person, via text, or how it changes. So if you're wondering how to communicate a letter of resignation effectively, you may want to check out this video on overall how to communicate with your team effectively. That one right there. You'll find we communicate some pretty helpful things in it.